In the vast Pacific, Japanese admirals dismissed her as a harmless speck. But in just 12 days, one tiny American destroyer escort turned the ocean into a graveyard hunting and sinking 6 submarines with impossible precision. This is the unbelievable true story they refused to accept. The Pacific in 1944 had become a battleground of staggering scale. After 3 years of war, the ocean was carved into contested corridors where American and Japanese forces clashed. Across thousands of miles, the Imperial Japanese Navy, once built around powerful battleships and elite carrier groups, had been weakened by successive defeats at Midway, the Solomons, and the Philippine Sea. With its surface fleet shrinking, Japan relied increasingly on the one force still capable of striking far from home: its submarines. Japanese submarines, originally designed for reconnaissance and long-range patrols, were pushed into a new, mission-disrupting, the American supply lines that kept the Pacific War moving forward. U.S. convoys carried fuel, ammunition, and troops from Pearl Harbor and the West Coast to the front lines scattered across the Central and Southwest Pacific. Every mile of open water posed a risk. A single torpedo could destroy a transport ship. In seconds, a single submarine could halt an entire convoy, forcing escorts to break formation and begin hours of tense searching. American commanders understood the stakes. Japan's submarines could not win the war on their own, but they could slow the advance, bleed out resources, and strike unexpectedly at isolated ships. Losses earlier in the war had already shown how vulnerable the long Pacific routes were. The U.S. fleet needed escorts capable of constant patrol, long endurance, and rapid construction vessels that could be produced faster than Japan could sink them. That need gave rise to the destroyer escort, smaller than traditional destroyers, and armed primarily for anti-submarine warfare. These ships were often viewed as modest tools for a massive task. They lacked the heavy guns of frontline warships and rarely appeared in major battle plans. Many considered them background units, meant for quiet duty far from the dramatic clashes of carriers and battleships. But the reality of the Pacific War was changing. Submarines had become one of Japan's final offensive weapons, and the vastness of the ocean demanded ships that could hunt relentlessly. In this environment, even an overlooked destroyer escort could become decisive, and soon, one such tiny warship would accomplish a feat so improbable that Japanese admirals struggled to believe it. When the USS England DE-635 entered service in late 1943, few in the U.S. Navy imagined she would ever be remembered. She was a Buckley-class destroyer escort, one of dozens launched from American shipyards at a pace designed to overwhelm the demands of the Pacific War. At just 306 feet long and displacing around 1,400 tons, she was half the size of a standard destroyer and carried a fraction of the firepower. Her weapons were practical rather than impressive light guns for surface targets and aircraft, depth charges for submarines, and the new Hedgehog mortar that many officers still considered experimental. Destroyer escorts were widely seen as second-tier ships. They lacked the speed, armor, and prestige of the Navy's celebrated destroyers. Their purpose was utilitarian: protect convoys, escort transports, and handle tasks too routine for frontline combat vessels. To many senior officers, these ships were a wartime necessity: cheap, quickly built, and easily replaced. The England's crew reflected the character of the ship itself: young, largely inexperienced, and drawn from across the United States. Most were in their late teens or early 20s. Few had imagined serving aboard a vessel that, by all appearances, lacked the glamour of combat duty. Their captain, Lieutenant Commander William B. Pendleton, commanded a crew that learned quickly to operate with discipline, even as they knew their ship was not meant for glory. Among the Allied commanders, expectations for destroyer escorts remained modest. These were workhorses, not war winners. They were trusted to guard supply convoys and patrol quiet sectors, not to engage enemy submarines with any level of intensity. Sub-hunting was traditionally the domain of larger, more capable ships. Yet the Pacific War rarely followed expectations. The USS England, small and easily overlooked, was about to demonstrate a level of effectiveness no one in the Allied command had predicted. What seemed like an ordinary escort vessel would soon become the most successful submarine hunter in American naval history. By 1944, anti-submarine warfare had undergone a quiet revolution, one that most Japanese commanders had not yet grasped. At the center of this shift was a weapon the USS England carried on her forward deck: the Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar. Unlike depth charges, which exploded at preset depths and often forced ships to lose sonar contact during an attack run. The Hedgehog fired a forward-facing pattern of 24 small contact-fused projectiles. They detonated only if they struck a submarine's hull. This meant that, for the first time, an escort ship could attack without losing track of its target. For a vessel as small as the England, this technology was transformative. With her modern QHB sonar, she could maintain continuous contact, measuring a submarine's bearing and range with remarkable accuracy. Each ping from the sonar provided real-time data, allowing the crew to adjust course, speed, and firing solutions within seconds. It created a new kind of pressure for enemy submarines. Silence offered no safety, and diving deeper no longer guaranteed escape. Equally important were the tactics developed to accompany this technology. The England's officers were trained in a new doctrine built on persistent tracking and repeated attack runs. Instead of dropping a single pattern of depth charges and breaking off, they would remain locked on a submarine for hours if necessary. The goal was simple: no contact was ever abandoned. Every detection ended either with the confirmed sinking or the physical exhaustion of every possibility. To the Japanese, these changes were invisible. Their submarines had been designed for reconnaissance and long-range patrols, not for surviving a hunter capable of striking with precision from above. Many Japanese commanders still assumed American escorts would lose track during attack runs, just as they had earlier in the war. But the England's combination of sonar, Hedgehog volleys, and relentless pursuit created an entirely new threat, one for which the Japanese Navy had no countermeasure ready. It raised a question the Pacific had never asked before. What happens when a small escort ship, armed with new technology and unwavering tactics, confronts a submarine carrying torpedoes capable of sinking her in a single hit? The answer would soon shake the confidence of Japan's naval command. The USS England's first test came on May 18, 1944, northeast of the Solomon Islands. Intelligence had reported a Japanese submarine moving through the area. I-16, a long-range Type C vessel tasked with delivering supplies to isolated island garrisons. For hours, the England patrolled quietly, her sonar operators listening to the rhythmic sweep of the ocean. Then it happened. A faint return, small, distant, but unmistakable. A submarine. The ship shifted instantly into attack mode. Engine steadied, course corrected, and the sonar team refined the bearing while the crew moved to their stations. The England closed the distance as the range narrowed, her operators calling out adjustments in calm, clipped tones. Every man on deck understood the stakes. I-16 carried torpedoes that could obliterate a destroyer escort in seconds. As the target's position stabilized, the order was given. The Hedgehog mounts fired a spread of 24 contact bombs, arcing forward and descending silently into the darkness. Unlike depth charges, there was no roar from the ship itself, only the tense quiet that followed. The England continued listening, sonar pings cutting through the void. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ocean erupted. A sharp, violent explosion tore upward from below, followed by a column of disturbed water. The blast was unmistakable. A Hedgehog strike directly on the submarine's hull. Within minutes, debris and an oil slick surfaced, confirmation that I-16 had been destroyed. The crew, many experienced in combat for the first time, stood stunned. They had hunted and sunk a Japanese submarine in less than 15 minutes. What had been theoretical training only weeks earlier had unfolded with startling precision. In Tokyo, the loss was noted but not feared. Japanese naval staff assumed the sinking was a matter of chance, a fortunate hit by an escort ship unlikely to repeat its success. They had no idea that the USS England was only getting started. 2 days after the sinking of I-16, the USS England was again on patrol. This time the weather had turned hostile. Heavy clouds rolled across the Pacific, and sheets of rain reduced visibility to a few hundred yards. Wind swept the decks, and the ship rose and fell sharply with each swell. Under normal circumstances, conditions like these favored submarines. Storms masked periscope wakes and distorted sonar returns. But the England pressed on, maintaining the same methodical search pattern that had brought her the first victory. Late on May 22, 1944, a second contact emerged, this one deeper, moving slowly and using the storm as cover. It was the Japanese submarine RO-106, one of several boats attempting to reinforce garrisons in the Bismarck Sea. The sonar team aboard the England picked up a faint echo through the crashing waves. It fluctuated, disappeared, then returned, confirming that something large and submerged was trying to slip past. The England maneuvered sharply to maintain contact, her engines laboring against the wind. Each adjustment brought the ship closer to the range of a possible torpedo launch. At any moment, RO-106 could fire. The fear was real. A single hit would break the England in half. Still, the pursuit continued. The crew worked with practiced precision, relaying course corrections from sonar to the bridge, then to the weapons team. When the firing solution stabilized, the order was given. Another pattern of Hedgehog mortars shot forward, vanishing into the storm-darkened sea again. The waiting began. No explosion. No sign of impact. The England circled tightly for another run, refusing to lose contact. A second Hedgehog salvo followed. This time the silence did not last. A powerful underwater detonation reverberated through the hull, unmistakably signaling a direct hit. RO-106 had been destroyed, with 2 submarines sunken for days. Word traveled quickly through the Pacific Fleet. Commanders began to take notice. The England's performance was no longer regarded as luck. She was doing something no destroyer or escort in the U.S. Navy had ever achieved, and her unprecedented run was only beginning. News of the losses reached Tokyo with unusual speed. Within days, reports from regional commands confirmed that 2 submarines I-16 and RO-106 had vanished in the same sector. What unsettled Japan's naval staff was not simply the losses themselves, but the details surrounding them. Both submarines had been sunk by the same vessel, a small, lightly armed destroyer escort named USS England. Inside the Imperial Japanese Navy's headquarters, the initial reaction was disbelief. Senior officers struggled to accept that a ship considered inferior to standard destroyers could strike with such consistency. Japanese doctrine held that American escorts were vulnerable, predictable, and often forced to break contact during attacks. The idea that one of these ships had eliminated 2 submarines in rapid succession contradicted years of operational experience. Commanders reviewed the patrol orders of their missing boats, searching for errors or evidence of recklessness. None appeared. Both submarines had been operating within their assigned lanes, following established procedures. If the reports were accurate, the Americans had developed a new capability, one that Japanese tacticians could not yet identify. Determined to restore control of the region, the combined fleet dispatched additional submarines to reinforce the area north of the Solomons. These boats, RO-104, RO-105, RO-108, and others, were ordered to continue supply missions and, if possible, to locate and destroy the troublesome American escort. Japanese commanders expected the England's success to be temporary, the result of favorable conditions or sheer coincidence. But the pattern continued. One after another, the submarines sent into the area failed to report back. Communications fell silent. Return dates passed without word. What began as a tactical concern slowly grew into strategic alarm. Japan's shrinking submarine arm, already strained by losses across the Pacific, was now being depleted by a single escort ship that seemingly defied conventional expectations. For the first time, the Japanese Naval Command faced a possibility they had never considered. A small American warship was dismantling their submarine force, one patrol at a time. In the days that followed, the USS England entered one of the most extraordinary runs in naval history. What began as isolated victories now unfolded into a relentless sequence of hunts, each more demanding than the last. The England's third kill came at dawn on May 23, 1944. The target, RO-104, was moving cautiously through the early morning haze, unaware it had already been detected by sonar. The England closed in with practiced efficiency. A single Hedgehog attack brought a violent underwater eruption that marked the submarine's destruction. The sun had barely risen. Yet another Japanese boat had vanished. Almost immediately, attention shifted to a new contact, RO-116. What followed became the England's most grueling pursuit. For nearly 18 hours, the ship tracked the submarine across shifting currents and fading light. The crew rotated through stations with minimal rest, their muscles aching from constant maneuvering. RO-116 tried everything: deep dives, abrupt turns, and silent running. But the England refused to break off. Late that night, a precise Hedgehog salvo found its mark. The 4th submarine slipped beneath the surface for good. Exhausted sailors stared at the expanding oil slick, aware they had just ended another crew's final stand. 2 days later, on May 26th, the England detected another submarine, RO-108, attempting to surface. The boat had risen to recharge its batteries, unaware that an escort capable of striking with little warning was nearby. The England moved swiftly into position. Within minutes, another Hedgehog pattern crashed into the water. A sudden explosion confirmed the kill. The fifth submarine had been caught at its most vulnerable moment. The final encounter in this extraordinary streak occurred on May 31st, when the England, working with the destroyer escorts George and Raby, located RO-105. This submarine fought with determination, executing tight turns and sudden changes in depth to shake its pursuers. Despite these evasive maneuvers, the England coordinated flawlessly with the other escorts. After multiple attack runs, a Hedgehog strike detonated against RO-105's hull. The submarine broke apart below the surface, ending the 12-day hunt with the England's sixth confirmed kill. By the end of this intense period, fatigue weighed heavily on the crew. They were proud of their success, yet each eruption beneath the waves carried a sobering reality. Every blast meant dozens of men, many not older than themselves, were gone. In 12 days, the England had achieved what no other U.S. ship ever had: 6 enemy submarines destroyed in rapid succession. It was a feat that seemed almost impossible, even to the sailors who lived through it. The USS England's 12-day campaign quickly moved beyond a series of isolated victories. It entered the official record as something unprecedented in naval warfare. No American ship, destroyer, cruiser, or carrier had ever achieved 6 submarine kills in such a short span. No ship in any navy had matched the feat before, and none has matched it since. In the aftermath, analysts across the Pacific Fleet reviewed the England's patrol logs, sonar recordings, and battle reports to understand how a small destroyer escort had dismantled a portion of Japan's undersea force with such precision. The impact on the Japanese Navy was significant. By mid-1944, Japan's submarine arm was already stretched thin, tasked with supply missions, reconnaissance, and attempts to disrupt American supply lines. The sudden loss of 6 submarines in one sector, within days, crippled local operations and forced Japanese commanders to reevaluate their remaining deployments. Each submarine required years to build and train. Each represented capabilities Japan could no longer afford to lose. The England streak did not decide the war, but it accelerated the collapse of Japan's ability to challenge American movements across key routes in the South Pacific. For the United States, the ship became a symbol of what overlooked vessels could accomplish. When paired with new technology, disciplined tactics, and determined crews, the England was never designed to change the course of a campaign. She was built to escort convoys, protect transports, and perform duties far from the center of attention. Yet in those 12 days, she demonstrated that even modest ships could redefine what was possible at sea. Her legacy became a reminder that wars are not shaped only by the mightiest fleets or the most famous battles. Sometimes they are altered by small decisions: an intercepted contact report, a precise sonar reading, a split-second order to fire. And sometimes they are shaped by a single ship that history almost overlooked. By early June 1944, the scale of the disaster could no longer be dismissed. The Imperial Japanese Navy compiled a formal assessment of submarine losses in the South Pacific, drawing on scattered transmissions, missed check-in times, and intelligence from regional commands. The report was blunt: 6 submarines had been lost in the same operational corridor, and all indications pointed to a single American warship as the cause. For senior officers in Tokyo, the conclusion bordered on impossible. The idea that a small destroyer escort one of the least imposing ships in the U.S. fleet could inflict this level of damage challenged long-held assumptions about American capabilities. These submarines were not reckless or poorly trained. They were following standard doctrine, operating in waters Japan still considered familiar terrain. Yet one small escort, as the report phrased it, had eliminated an entire submarine group sent to reinforce the region. The disbelief soon gave way to frustration. Within the combined fleet, officers debated whether American technology had advanced beyond their understanding or whether failures within their own command structure had allowed the situation to spiral. The loss of 6 submarines did more than weaken Japan's strategic position. It exposed the growing disintegration of its naval command system. Communications were inconsistent, intelligence was outdated, and replacement submarines could no longer be produced quickly enough to compensate. The official report circulated quietly among senior staff, a stark acknowledgement of a reality many had resisted. Japan's submarine force, once seen as a final tool to disrupt American advances, had been outmatched and outpaced by a ship they had never considered a threat. and the USS England streak stood as undeniable proof of how far the balance of power had shifted. When the USS England completed her remarkable patrol in June 1944, her crew returned to port with little fanfare. They were tired, sunburned, and still processing what they had achieved. Most were young men who had joined the Navy expecting routine convoy duty, not a place in naval history. Their ship, still modest in appearance and lightly armed compared to the fleet's celebrated destroyers, bore no outward sign that she had achieved something no warship had ever done before. After repairs and additional service in the Pacific, the England remained active through the final months of the war. She escorted convoys, patrolled contested waters, and supported operations as Japan's naval forces collapsed. When the war ended in 1945, the crew returned home to quiet reunions with family and friends. Some remained in the Navy, many stepped back into civilian life, carrying memories of long nights on sonar watches, violent underwater explosions, and the weight of knowing they had sent hundreds of enemy sailors to the bottom. The England herself did not enjoy a long post-war career. With rapid demobilization and the transition to new naval technologies, she was decommissioned in 1946. For years she remained in reserve, eventually being struck from the Navy list and scrapped in 1971. No ceremonies marked her end. The steel of the most successful submarine hunter in U.S. naval history was quietly dismantled, yet her legacy endured. Naval academies, anti-submarine warfare schools, and fleet commanders studied her 12-day streak as a benchmark of what precise tactics, disciplined training, and advanced technology could achieve. The England proved that a small ship overlooked by adversaries and underestimated by allies could alter the course of undersea warfare. Her story remains a reminder that courage, innovation, and teamwork can transform even the humblest vessel into a legend. In the vast history of naval combat, no ship has ever matched what the USS England accomplished.